In this video, we're also going to be talking about another very important part of Photoshop, and that is called layer masks. Layer masks are extremely important. Get used to them as well because they're very handy to have around, and let me show you exactly what they do. A layer mask, basically what its purpose is to provide a mask and hide certain parts of the layer that you're currently on in a very non-destructive manner. Instead of the erase tool, which will actually delete parts of the image, the layer mask, putting a layer mask on the layer will hide parts of the image that you can easily bring back. Now, to apply a layer mask to our layer here, there's a couple different ways to do that. The first way is to go to Layer and then Layer Mask and Reveal All or Hide All. Well, if you do a Reveal All, this puts a white layer mask here. You don't see much of a change because everything that is painted in white here is not hidden. Anything in black will be hidden in the image, and I'll show you what I mean by that here in a second. So Control to Z to get back, and I'll show you if we go back and hit Layer Mask Hide All. That creates a black layer mask, and because it's filled in with black, it hides everything in that actual layer, so we don't see our apple anymore. So Control to Z to get back out of here. The other way to create a layer mask, and this is what I normally do, is click on my layer that I have selected, and then go ahead and add layer mask like that, and that adds a white one. Reveal all. Now, to hide parts on the layer mask, you can click between these thumbnails here and basically choose what part of the layer you want to be painting on. When you switch over to the layer mask part, the two colors that you'll be using is black and white. Black, like I said, hides everything, and white reveals. Now if I switch to my brush tool with the black selected, I can come in here and just start painting away everything here that I don't want. And you'll notice that it's being hidden as if I were using the eraser tool, but I'm not using the eraser tool. So when I let go of this, you'll see that I have the thumbnail over here kind of represent what I just did. Now as you'll see, I kind of knocked out part of the apple that I don't want. So if I hit X, I'll switch over to white. X over here switches between your foreground and your background. So if I go to white and start painting on the layer mask in white, it brings it back. It reveals what I've just hidden. So you can hit X again and then get rid of this part here. So that's really the basics of layer mask and what they do. What they're designed for. They're just designed to be a very non-destructive way of hiding parts of a layer that you don't want to be seen. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and come out of here, and then to show you more of a practical way of using a layer mask. So I'll move to my move tool and I'll drag this over to our image of the kitty again, and I'll scale this guy down a little bit so it'll be a little bit more manageable. And I think that'll be okay. We'll hit enter to confirm that transformation. I'm going to push this up to 100% so we can see what we're doing. Now in this example, I want to stress to you that when you're actually creating and working on a layer mask, you're not confined to just the brush tool. So let me add another layer mask to here. And we want to get rid of this background so that it looks like the cat's looking at some floating apple, I suppose. So what we'll do is instead of using our brush tool to black this out, to add black, we can do it in any kind of manner that we were using as far as selecting. So if I were to even select the elliptical tool, come to about the general center of this apple, hold down Alt and Shift, that will start it from the center and constrain it to a perfect circle, and I'll drag this out to about the circumference of the circle of the apple. Let go. Now I have the apple selected. Now I'm going to hit Control Shift I to select the inverse. So everything on the outside of the apple here is being now selected. Now to fill this, I want to fill this with black. The hotkey shortcuts to fill with black or fill with your foreground color is Alt, Delete, or Backspace. So if I held down Alt and hit Backspace, or delete, or option delete, and Now to fill this with white or your background color, you use Control Delete or Control Backspace, and that will fill it with white. So keep that in mind whenever you're trying to fill a selection with a certain color, because that's the easiest way to do it versus using the fill tool. So you see what that did there. If I hit Alt Delete again, that brings us back, and I can deselect this, and now I have a freestanding apple. And I can even switch over to the brush tool again, decrease the size a little bit with black selected, and I can go in here and fine touch this a little bit. And if I mess up and I kind of I hack off part of that apple, all I got to do is hit X to switch to white and start painting back in the apple. So you start to get the idea behind layer mask instead of actually using the eraser tool. I don't use the eraser tool too much, simply for the fact that it is destructive. So that is layer mask. That's how they're used. Also, just like I say with every tool, get in there, use it, get in there and play with it, because you can't get good at something if you don't practice. And as far as selecting goes, I do want to mention one more thing. I think I forgot to mention in the previous actually, it's the selecting video, is as far as adding and selecting, or I'm sorry, adding to and subtracting to from selections. Let me make a quick rough selection here again. So now we have the apple selected. If you want to add to this selection, we'll switch over to the lasso tool. Hold down the Shift key, and then you can actually add to your selection. And if you want to subtract, you hold down Alt. And I apologize if that kind of if people had those questions in your head when we were talking about the selection video. I do it all the time, but I completely blew it off because I just forgot. So that's how you add and subtract from selections, and that is all about layer mask.